and welcome to the MHR podcast. I'm Andy.
I'm Alice.
So last week, Alice, we had a really good chat about what a productive workspace is and how you can get the most out of your employees and their productivity by creating an environment that works well for them.
Yeah.
Well, this week I thought we could look at some of the productivity pitfalls of remote working. And the phrase that I've seen in a couple of articles now, the fear of being offline, and how digitalization and technology can support people keeping connected when they're not in the office.
I like that. I feel like it's a topic that's probably been rumbling away quite a while since COVID, and everyone obviously converted to working from home. But it'll be interesting to now reflect upon that and see what we have learnt from that change.
Yeah, and it's a nice natural segue, isn't it, from... we've just talked about what you can do to get the best out of your people in a space.
Yeah.
Some people can't be, or some people are struggling to get back in or are choosing not to. That comes at a price, I think. And I think businesses need to be aware of how they combat that kind of dispersed workforce, if you like. Or also the old working from home thing. And I love the topic of fear of being offline, because I think that rings a lot of bells in my head about like when you have had to work from home or when you're in lockdown or say your business does work that way, and then all of a sudden everyone's like, just make sure my Skype or my Microsoft Teams are green. Like I'd never and like that's what it conjures to me.
It is anything to keep that mouse moving.
Yeah, it's like I'm not necessarily being productive just because I look like I'm online. I just look like I am.
Although saying that is quite funny because we joke about it, but I work from home. My contracts actually work from home, being in sales, but I find that I end up using more of my hours.
Yeah.
Kind of really focused because I haven't got the office distractions.
And sometimes I feel like you put more pressure on yourself when you're working remotely because you want to be seen to be there because they very much know you're not.
Yes.
So you're like, oh no, and actually you do work longer hours. Statistically, I think we'll go into that in a bit. You do work longer hours when you're working out of the office. And you put more pressure on yourself to be seen. And actually, I think it can be a bit more of an anxious environment because you end up spinning on your own in your own head. But sometimes when people are around you and you can ask simple, quick questions, you think about things a lot less.
Yeah. It's actually a good point. You just made me think when I'm at home and I send a message and I'm like, oh, do you just have an answer? Or do you know where this file's kept?
Yeah.
And it's kind of that waiting.
The waiting's like, what am I going to do? How am I going to do with this? What's going on? Yeah, you do spiral on your own sometimes.
I'm awful for that.
So, fear of being offline. Have you heard this phrase before?
I feel like it's been floated around. I think we must have come across the same blog actually when we were doing a bit of research.
Yeah.
But it is a bit of a catching title, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because in some ways, I think the idea of being offline, it's that complete disconnect.
Yeah.
And that's an unknown.
Yeah.
I think that's how it makes you feel, doesn't it? Just that complete darkness almost, if I can put it that way.
So we were reading this blog about it, weren't we? And and it said, "Do you suffer from the fear of being offline? Where are your top productivity hacks? When do you know when it's time to quit a role and move on?" And I think this is a really interesting one. So it all talks about how technology and digitalization is there to enhance your working methods, right?
Yeah.
And it keeps you engaged and it keeps you up to date with a team. That's the point. But I do think the presence of that technology in your life, especially when you're working from home, it can also be quite imposing, right? Because it can also be a distraction. So I've got a monitor. No one can see me around the office because I'm not in the office. So I've got my social feeds on this monitor. I've got my work on this monitor. I've got other things. It's so easy to get distracted.
Yeah.
Or I'll just put a kettle on. I'm putting the kettle on every 10 minutes.
Hear the washing machine going in the background.
Yeah, the washing machine's going. Well, and while I'm at home, I may as well do the washing. I mean, it's only 2 minutes. So it's not really disrupting my day. Oh, and actually, while I'm doing that, I might prep my lunch for later. And washing machine's done. So I'll go take that out and let that dry. May as well do it now. Then I don't have to do it in the evening. Before you know it, you've split your day doing some housework as well as working actually from your desk, and you've gone yellow 5 times and you're getting really anxious. So I do think there is some distractions to be had from a lot of technology being around you in your home.
Can be.
We all use Teams and we all use Skype, but is there an agreed way of how we use this?
It's an interesting question because I think probably a lot of Teams, if I take that as an example, it probably got embedded very quickly into organisations. And maybe it's kind of been that backwards way of learning what it can do, how to use it. But there probably isn't really a how-to best guide, is there?
Yeah, I remember lockdown happening and then all of a suddenly jumping onto Teams, not using it ever before really.
Yes.
and Microsoft packages. And actually, that's when SharePoint was more of a thing as well. Because people were like, oh, yeah, when I just have it on my drive. Well, we don't have a drive. We're not in the office anymore, so you have to put it online. And everyone realised that everyone saves the files a different way or in a different place, and there was no centralised space for anything. And it was just made everything a lot harder. And I think when you're not in a team together in person, collaborating, you're kind of not, you've not got that kind of like complicit kind of teamwork mode on, where you start syncing in how you act and behave. You actually do your own thing and you realize that's completely different from everyone else. So when you're finding someone else digitally or collaborating with them digitally, as soon as they do something that doesn't work for you, you're like, this doesn't work. No, don't do that. Don't send me that. Stop sending me a raw copy of that document. Send me the live link. We'll edit it together. Like, all of these things get quite annoying and frustrating when you realize as a team you don't work together. And it's very hard for you to establish those ways of working when you're not in the same place.
Definitely. I think it's a really important point, speaking about it, because I think it kind of shows that disconnect between what would traditionally be office workers and where you are in the same proximity of each other, and you can come to an agreement, or you can lay out the foundations of how you guys would like to work as a team. But when you're split between office and at home, or if you're all remote working, how do you come to that agreement? And can people have their honest opinion put across? Because we know what it's like, isn't it, when you're on screen and you're trying to be polite and let someone else finish talking, and then it's really hard to nip in and say, oh, actually.
Yeah, and I remember like I worked for a company where we did like every morning at 9 a.m. exactly, we all jumped on a call.
Right.
We all worked from home. It was all in lockdown, and everyone was like, "Oh, I can't be bothered with this. This is not how I work." Because George over here, actually his productive hours are like from 10 onwards, but he has to do his admin for a couple of hours. Some people are early birds, and that's when they're falling. And like just forcing people in a digital space felt a lot more exhausting than when you're actually doing a stand-up in person.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of digital fatigue, and I still think that's a thing.
Definitely,
I think going from meeting to meeting to meeting on Teams is exhausting.
Oh yeah, you really don't get a break, and maybe just a simple thing of just standing up and having a little walk around. You completely miss out if you do have meetings back to back.
Yeah.
I mean, how did you find it having those set meetings in the calendar, like that 9 a.m. everyone logs on?
I found it quite draining after a while because it became quite monotonous.
Yeah.
I like the spontaneity of being in a space around people where things are happening and it's all dynamic and you can bounce off that energy. I think at home, or if you're work remotely somewhere else, you're kind of, it feels like there's a lot more waiting. You're waiting for responses, aren't you? You're waiting for that reply to that message. And in that meantime, you're spiraling or thinking about something else. And sometimes if you can just go up and ask, sometimes it's just easier, right?
Yeah. But I feel like it probably comes down to how you like to work.
Yeah.
Because I can imagine, there are people out there that completely thrive from working from home.
Yeah.
In the fact that they can structure the day as they like.
Yeah.
They can really focus on the work. And there's definitely jobs out there that it probably is more beneficial to work from home.
Yeah.
But I think for both of us to relate to that, we benefit more being in the office and having those interactions and collaborations and, nipping over to that person that we need to speak to and getting the answer straight away.
Yeah, absolutely. So, according to this recent article, FOBO, fear of being offline, is the fear of being offline.
I'm not sure how I feel about
that. It's a new one. We've got another one.
FOBO.
It's used to describe the need for employees to feel like they're proving they're being productive when working from home, such as, example, continuously updating their status to make their colleagues know that they're on board or using their keyboard, right? It's necessarily a true reflection of people's work, right? And it's about hacking productivity, right?
Okay.
So what change can you make in your work to your day of work to fundamentally transform how you work, right? Whether that's doing walking meetings or walking from a cafe or starting your day earlier, these things all have kind of impact, right?
Right.
And I think they become more at your forefront when suddenly you're doing this all at home.
Yeah.
Some people are like, actually, I'm going to take myself to a coffee shop. I'd rather work from there. I say, well, how beneficial is that? Can you actually have a call there? You probably can't. Is the Wi-Fi free? Is it distracting? They're like, I'm working from home and the plumber's in. This is really annoying. There's a lot of stuff like that.
Definitely. It probably, if you're thinking about it, if you are from home, it would be interesting to see what it's like in terms of maybe job promotion.
Yeah.
Because if you're not visible in the office, you can be visible online. We're not saying that, but it will be interesting how much that can impact on the likelihood of a promotion if you're not seen.
The influence, right? Physical influence. Well, that's an interesting point because actually that's the next thing I want to talk about. So we talked about fear of being offline, right? that's a very much a working from home problem. I've been reading a few more articles that talk about the issues of working from home.
Okay.
Now, obviously, for some businesses it works well. Some people, other businesses, it's not ideal. It's not how people want to work.
Yeah.
And there is trends for people moving back towards in-office situations, both from a company cultural point of view, but also that's how businesses have identified where their productivity wants to run. Right.
Yep.
So it's business by business, and I know everyone has their own preferences. And I like being in. I know we waffle about that a lot. So. In the article that I was reading, it states that remote workers historically work longer hours,
Right.
get less recognition, as you've mentioned, right? Than their office-based colleagues. And it doesn't have to be that way. Some experts have been analysing what this means. So in a survey, almost half of remote workers said that they've been dealing with anxiety as other employees have started returning to work in person at their companies and they haven't. Of those, 66% said remote work anxiety or fear of being offline and FOMO, right, has hurt their productivity or efficiency at work. And more than half of respondents said they reported feeling symptoms of depression because they felt isolated and out the loop. So there's, especially in a culture where you've got half and half, that can be quite damaging. You can feel like, oh, I'm not in the loop here. Am I missing out?
Yeah. It's probably quite a key thing to bring up for HR departments or business owners because they might be looking more at productivity and the outcome of the individual and teams, but actually what sits beneath that all? Are they feeling safe? Are they feeling happy working from home? Does that suit them?
Right? So remote workers historically, let's say they work longer hours. And I think that rings true. Like I remember when I was working from home and I'd have my work laptop and I'd put it on a desk, probably in a desk that was in my bedroom now because I had to work from there during lockdown, right?
Yeah.
I turn it on and I'm like, I'm ready. I would then I'd get dressed and then I'd get ready and I would go to work and that would take me half an hour and then I'm at work and then I'd set up. Well, now I'm ready. Okay, I'll just log on straight away then.
Quick selection of the team background of the day.
Yeah, done. And then you know what? It's 7:30 and I've started my day earlier than I usually would. So I may as well crack on. That's good. Feel productive.
Yeah.
Oh, lunch has come in. Well, you know what? I've walked around the house a bit already. I won't take my lunch break. That's absolutely fine.
I must say, I definitely do that. I think when I work from home, it is that thought of, well, I've grabbed lunch. Well, I can eat and read an email, or I can eat and watch this training that I need to catch up on. So suddenly you do find that, you're doing the extra hours, and then, for 5:30 rolls around and you're thinking, oh, I'll just, whereas normally if I'm in the office, I see people walking out, I think, oh, I'll just join you.
Yeah.
I'm actually done for today.
Yeah, the momentum's moving, so I can feel like I can shut off. Well, now, I'm not shutting off because I'm actually working in my home space. So it's here anyway. I may as well keep it going. Oh, you know what? It's not taking me much effort. I'll just do a bit more. Oh, the laptop's there. I can see it blinking in the corner. I'll do a bit more. Suddenly it's 7, 8, 9 o'clock, and actually you haven't separated your headspace from your work.
And that's really important, isn't it? Because we speak about that work-life balance, and probably working from home, it infringes on, how do you keep to that work-life balance?
Yeah, right. And again, we've talked about place, right? We've talked about space of working. I think if that is at home, how do you separate workspace from home space and how that affects your body, your feeling, your emotions, and your well-being? Right?
Yeah, completely.
So these fears are not unfounded. According to data released in April of the Office of National Statistics in the UK, showed that before the pandemic, remote workers put almost double overtime compared to in-office colleagues.
Right.
They were less than half likely to be promoted over a 5-year period, and there were also 38% of them less likely to have received a bonus and less likely to receive training opportunities. So is it a case of out of sight, out of mind? Don't know.
That's an interesting point.
Right. So research shows that those who have the opportunity to interact with senior management are more likely to be promoted and are going to get better information and better access to resources. And the quote from the researcher here says, if senior management is in the office and there is going to be a privilege to being able to work in the office and have the opportunity to be face-to-face with them, that can be really isolating for people who are working remotely. But I think the flip side of that is true, that there's also no career benefit to being at the office when who doesn't want to work in their pajamas? But also, depending on your relationship with stakeholders, if you're intimidated by senior management and maybe you're like, oh, I'm glad I'm at home, I don't want to be around these people, or I don't want to work with that stakeholder because I can't manage it. Not necessarily that's a healthy position to be working in, but that is a thing that I'm sure people have dealt with. It doesn't mean that obviously hybrid working is impossible. It's just about how you make sure that relationships are maintained in the same way, both in a person and a digital space. And that's what I thought we could discuss last.
Yeah.
Because we've just talked about last week about space. This week we're talking about working remotely. There must be a balance, right?
Completely.
And businesses are doing it.
Yeah. And I think probably what weaves it all together and what we really want to make the point of is digitalization.
Yes. So how can technology help people keep connected?
Yeah.
For me, the one point I thought I'd raise is there is a huge advantage to being in person because you can have that kind of real conversational connection, right?
Yeah.
But the way, for example, we use HR software and processes with products like People First, for example, is that even though I'm having that in-person interaction, I'm using People First to structure that interaction and record data in a standardized way. So the conversation go however we want it, but my key talk points that People First sets me in my check-in or my interview notes means that actually there's no reason why I can't take that same structure and get the same answers to the same questions if I was doing this digitally.
Yeah.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's about recognizing that, yes, you're in a different space and you're going to interact in a different way, but there are technical processes that can allow us to make sure we're capturing the same people data, and then that can be recorded in the same way regardless of your location. And that's when I think a remote workforce can be more powerful.
Definitely.
When actually Joe at home is having the same experience to Susan in the office, based in terms of what's been written up and what's been recorded.
Yeah, and I think ultimately that's just empowering your business, isn't it? From the HR perspective, it's how to empower your business wherever they are.
Yeah.
Whether you have an office space or they're at home, like you say, going back to that key point, which is they're all having the same experience.
Yeah.
They're all able to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And ultimately, they can emphasise whether that workspace is working for them. But ultimately, I think one other point that I'd like to highlight is the value of the relationships.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I don't think it matters where you are. I think it matters how you're working. Are you working to your optimum? Is it your workspace? Is it how you're interacting with people? And have HR or your company made it clear that this is how you use Teams. This is your people software, like People First. This is how we like to stay connected. I think it's all about setting and outlining it from the beginning. This is our way of working, and seeing what works for everyone.
It's a shared view of those processes, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Like, okay, we are going to use these things. You are different there, but we all agree on the terms. We all agree on how it works, because that's how we sync. I don't mind working on this document on Teams with you, Greg, for this meeting, even though you were supposed to be in person, because at least now we're working on a live link and we've agreed how that works.
Yeah.
Like,
it's definitely transformed the way that we work, hasn't it?
It has.
The world of work has definitely changed drastically, I would say, over the past, 8-10 years probably.
Absolutely. I think it's changed because it's proven that technology can improve processes. It can
100%.
speed things up. It can remove the burden of the admin from the person.
Yeah.
As long as you all agree that the people are working in the right way. As soon as people are doing different things with technology to try and achieve the same goal, that's when you can find some issues because you're not synced. But if you can sync, you're cooking on gas.
Definitely.
Digital gas. Yeah.
Interesting.
Cool.
I think we've had a good chat about digital
Fair
do's
enough.
and don'ts.
Do you prefer being in office or in person? Or remote?
I prefer the office.
Do you?
I do like a chat.
Yeah, I do love a good chat.
Yeah.
I like a good chat in person. But
someone brought in tiramisu today.
Did they?
It was good.
You couldn't have that at home, could you?
No.
Can't email that.
No.
Fair enough.
Could not. So there you go. Other benefits of being in the office.
Is the
Baked goods.
Drastic weight gain that I've developed. Fair enough. Cool. Well, if you have any thoughts, please obviously comment on the podcast, subscribe, share, talk to us on social media about how you feel about the remote working, in-house working, and how technology can help it. It can go hand in hand, right, as long as our processes align.
Yes.
And if you'd like to hear more about what we do at MHR with People First or HR technology or payroll technology and services, check us out on mhrglobal.com. And we'll see you next week. But until then, I've been Andy.
And I'm Alice.
Cheers.
Bye.